before that last comment gets me into trouble about, I didn't ask Graham to advocate for a particular charitable organization in this province and country. I want to thank you, Graham, for it's fantastic. I asked my staff to embellish my resume, and I get Graham to read it, and it. Let me say, you're probably, when you hear that resume, you're probably wondering what I know about business. And the segue from War Child. So War Child started actually in 1999 really as a family business. Two people, myself and my wife, Samantha Nutt. And it was a startup. It was a not-for-profit as well. So those of you who either run or have colleagues that run not-for-profit, even though it's a charity, it's a business as well. And we grew it from a staff of one person. My wife decided not to employ me. She was the first and sole employee. But we grew it into an organization that now has about 600 staff worldwide and is a multi-million-dollar organization. So particularly, I think, when you look at the fact that 99% of the businesses in this province are small and medium-sized, so with less than 100 employees. And it's those businesses that start with one or two individuals, or the family businesses that, because of the business climate, the economic climate that's existed for so long in this province and the culture of entrepreneurism, that it's those small and medium-sized enterprises that have grown over the years to not simply sustain our economy, but create an economy which is in many ways the envy of the world. Now, particularly, I'm going to stay on this tack particularly because, and Kevin, I'm glad you sort of uplifted us with the motivation and the challenging towards the end of your speech, but you also gave us some very important, if not sobering, statistics about Ontario's and Canada's place in the world. So I'm going to stay on the tack of positive and uplifting and a bit of a pep talk if I can. And of course, it's always awesome to follow two such distinguished speakers like Kevin and Alan. And so you might have seen me at the front. I was madly scratching out paragraphs of my speech, which these two have already covered the points much more eloquently than I ever could. But these two individuals and many, many people, as I look across the gathering here this morning, I know many of you, and it's quite remarkable just to see the talent and expertise and commitment and innovation that exists within these four walls this morning. But these two guys, Alan and Kevin, are doing such great work to advance a priority that we all share, and that's making Ontario's economy the strongest it can be. And both the work of the OCC and the Jobs and Prosperity Council, of which Kevin is co-chair, and we'll be meeting in December because it's the one-year anniversary of the report coming out. These two individuals and the organizations that they represent and the work that they've done is absolutely invaluable to our government and our province. And it's, in many ways, it's like receiving the best advice that money can't buy. Sorry, guys. Combined with what really has become a catalyst for action for this government. And it's safe to say that both emerging stronger in its various updates, as well as the Jobs and Prosperity Report Advantage Ontario, have formed a blueprint and the foundation for the way this government is looking at how we can emerge stronger and how we can turn Ontario's advantages into greater advantages and look outwards towards the world to take advantage of some of the things that have already been referenced in terms of opportunity. And so as business leaders, you know better than anybody that the competition that Ontario faces on the world stage today is intense. And the results are there in black and white. We see them every day in the newspapers, on the websites. But if anyone here has any doubts, even for a second, that Ontario has what it takes to succeed, you need, as I mentioned, only to look around this room, full of Ontario's dynamic business leaders, to see the talent and the innovation that's flourishing in literally every part of this province. Now, as Minister of Economic Development, Trade and Employment, I've been fortunate to see firsthand that vision that Ontario businesses have. They're moving the economy forward, competing and succeeding in the global economy. 2 weeks ago, I was in Israel and the West Bank, leading a delegation of Ontario water and wastewater technology companies. Now, of course, we've all heard of the green economy. Well, we were there to promote the blue economy. And Ontario is literally leading the world in the water and wastewater technology sector. So it was remarkable to see the interest and recognition that Ontario enjoys. Ontario's water, tech, and wastewater companies are revered as global frontrunners. Their expertise was sought out and highlighted at a water industry trade show with 14,000 participants halfway around the world. And one of our Ontario companies, Realtech, a small firm based in Whitby, announced a partnership with Israel's National Water Authority. Realtech has pioneering water testing technology that the world wants. And that's just one example. Another Ontario firm that was there, 2G Robotics, and its underwater laser mapping technology provided engineers who were writing the cruise line vessel, the Costa Concordia, not that long ago, a couple of months ago, provided them with the information that they needed to get that correct, to right the ship, and of course they were successful. So an Ontario water technology firm provided those engineers with the information that they needed to be able to right the ship. So that's just two examples of Ontario firms in one sector, and we have many, many sectors or clusters of expertise, but that one has more than 900 Ontario companies working in it, more than 22,000 individuals employed in that sector. And this is a space where they're providing solutions both at home and abroad. So also while I was there, I met in Israel and West Bank, I met with a very talented academic, Professor James Koropatnik. He's a distinguished oncology scientist at the Regional Cancer Program in London at Western University. And he's doing some pioneering research with Al-Quds University in the West Bank. They're testing platinum-based compounds that can be used to treat cancer. And these compounds have been developed at Al-Quds University in the West Bank, and they're being tested here in Ontario. It was inspiring stuff. And I'm relaying these stories as a way to share with you my unfettered belief that Ontario has what it takes to be a global powerhouse in both established and new emerging technologies. One of the best things about my job is that week in and week out, I get to meet with individuals and companies right around the province, just like the ones that I've described. Talented, innovative, driven leaders who are out there on the world stage, going global. So I see our job as a government to do everything that we can to ensure that companies like Realtech and 2G Robotics and individuals like Professor Koropatnik have what they need in order to compete effectively. And that's what we're constantly striving towards, with advice from people like Alan and Kevin who have been instrumental in guiding our work. Both the OCC's Emerging Stronger reports and the Jobs and Prosperity Council report positioned increasing our exports as a top priority in their recommendations. And we've heard the statistics. Now, back in September, Ontario launched our Going Global Trade Strategy. Business asked for it, and we listened. And a summary of its main points are on your tables. It's interesting that it's the first time that Ontario has ever had a formal trade strategy with objectives and a solid plan to achieve them. And the strategy builds on the work already underway and focuses on 4 key pillars. 1, we will diversify our markets. We heard a bit about this already. Roughly 77% of our exports go to the United States, another 15% to the European Union. and only 8% to the rest of the world, despite now and certainly for the foreseeable future, the next couple of decades, the growth, the high growth is going to be taking place elsewhere. It will not be taking place in the 92% of where our exports are currently going. So second, we will increase the number of Ontario companies that export, especially our small and medium-sized businesses. Now, this makes sense on a couple of levels because 99% of the businesses in this province are small and medium-sized, but also, as we've heard, roughly only 7% of our small and medium-sized enterprises currently export outside of Canada. Third, we will build Ontario's brand and Canada's brand internationally. I'll be traveling to Brazil in the new year to open Ontario's 11th International Marketing Center in Sao Paulo. Fourth, we'll streamline resources to make it easier for our businesses to trade. So Ontario, working with our public and private sector partners, is already active in all of these areas. And with the Going Global strategy, it will provide a framework as we ramp up our efforts. And of course, the US and Europe will continue to be important trading partners for us. The Canada-EU trade agreement recently announced by the federal government will certainly support this. While not perfect, we expect the agreement will see the removal of some 98% of tariffs, opening up new opportunities for Ontario's companies in this market of 500 million consumers with a GDP of $17 trillion. It is the single largest economic bloc in the world. And we'll also work with companies to break into, as I mentioned, high-growth emerging markets, including Asia, South America, and Africa. Now, the Israel West Bank mission that I mentioned is a tangible example of how our government can help companies gain a foothold in new markets. And to show our government's commitment in cornering opportunities in emerging markets, this year we will lead more than 60 trade missions connecting Ontario companies to global opportunities. I have already, in the past 5 months, led trade missions to Japan, France, Germany, California, Israel, and the West Bank, and Alberta, where I will be returning for a second time next week. So our trade strategy will make it easier for businesses to find the programs and services that will help you export, to support our small and medium-sized businesses who want to go global but need support making international connections. As Kevin mentioned, we launched Ontario's inaugural Global Export Forum in September. Now, in fact, this was one of the recommendations that was explicit in the Advantage Ontario report of the Jobs and Prosperity Council, and one that we took very seriously, this idea of hosting reverse trade missions. So rather than gathering up Ontario companies, sending them abroad with the complexity that that does, as important as that is, but the complexity that that entails, we're starting to do the reverse, where we bring buyers and investors from these regions to Ontario and collect Ontario businesses here in the province to have enable the two to interact. And so this first forum that was focused on the Asia-Pacific region back in September, the first of its kind in the province, brought 500 Ontario businesses together to meet with and make deals with business leaders from the Asia-Pacific region. And we're going to have our second Global Export Forum in the spring, focusing on Latin and South America. And to ensure that the same level of government support is available to all businesses, from small startups to multinationals, we're taking that expertise and our efforts for going global online by building a one-window access through ontario.ca. Now, beyond our Going Global trade strategy, our government's also brought forward a range of initiatives to strengthen our economy at home. And I'm going to mention a few of them here. I think you'll agree that they help support the priorities put forward by the OCC and the Jobs and Prosperity Council. So one of the first that we did was announce in the budget in the spring that we're going to parallel the federal government's decision to extend to the end of 2015 the accelerated capital cost allowance for manufacturing and processing machinery and equipment. This, from the province alone, will save our businesses $250 million over the next 3 years. We've also launched a collaboration voucher program, a recommendation of the Jobs and Prosperity Council, again, to connect our businesses with research institutions. The program will help the private sector take full advantage of the amazing expertise and knowledge that's found in Ontario's universities, colleges, and research hospitals, and ensure that that research that's taking place is founded in the principle of commercialization. Ontario's new youth job strategy, announced last month as well, will help create 30,000 job opportunities for young people. It's a $295 million initiative over the next 2 years, helping young people find work, build job skills, or start their own businesses with new funds, new programs, and online tools. And Ontario will become the first province in Canada to offer a province-wide certified site program. We're calling it Investment Ready. It's an investment-ready site designation that will give investors to this province a greater degree of certainty when looking for development opportunities in Ontario's municipalities. And financial assistance will be available to help cover certain costs incurred during the certification process. So the investment-ready certified site program was announced by the Premier in August. We're aiming to open the program to applications next month. And a recent highlight for me was celebrating the one-year anniversary of the Southwestern Ontario Development Fund and the first anniversary of the Eastern Ontario Development Fund becoming permanent $20 million annual funds supporting our businesses across the province in those two regions. These funds demonstrate how targeted business support, so far they have protected and created more than 22,000 jobs in those two regions. An $80 million investment by government leveraging almost a $1 billion investment from the private sector. These funds can help drive at the local level job creation, capital investment, and innovative technology. Ladies and gentlemen, I've visited many ambitious companies that have big plans in their respective fields. Everything from auto parts to food processing, industrial equipment to tourism. And we look forward to announcing many more projects in the coming months. Now, the initiatives I've touched on here are just the tip of the iceberg. They're part of our government's economic plan for jobs and growth. And I see a positive cycle at play here. If we can help companies become more productive, and we heard earlier how important that is, and that Canada and Ontario has much work to do on the efficiency and the productivity growth side, the growth and productivity. If we can help our companies become more productive and innovative at home, they will be better positioned to compete internationally. And if we can help companies compete internationally, we can create more jobs and opportunities in communities right across the province. So it's a win-win for business and government. There's one more area that I want to highlight especially, and lastly, given our focus today on going global and on positioning Ontario to succeed now and in the future. You may be aware that in the throne speech, the Premier announced that she would move responsibility for Ontario's Accessibility Directorate from the Ministry of Community and Social Services to the Ministry of Economic Development, Trade and Employment, my ministry. This move has given us an unprecedented opportunity to engage business leaders like yourselves in efforts to make our province more accessible and in the process to make our province more competitive. 1 in 7 Ontarians today have a disability. That number is growing, of course, as our population ages. There's tremendous economic opportunity here in providing goods and services in an accessible way. Just like in the blue economy and in life sciences research, Ontario has an opportunity to lead the world, exporting goods, services, and knowledge in the area of accessibility. And so today, with such an impressive group of business leaders gathered here in one place, I ask that you join with me in helping both to improve the participation of Ontarians with disabilities into the workforce, but also to make Ontario a global leader in this burgeoning economic space. We will do this by making our businesses more accessible in line with our province's accessibility standards and by making accessibility-focused goods and services an important part of our going global trade strategy. And so to conclude, my takeaway points would be these. First, we're tremendously fortunate that Ontario has such a vibrant and forward-looking business community. We're already seeing many beneficial collaborations among business, government, and academia to get our economy firing on all cylinders. And all of this is a foundation to expand Ontario's reach into world markets, to go global and be recognized for what we are, a truly global leader. So thank you, everyone, for the opportunity to share my perspective as the Minister, as the Jobs Minister, the Minister of Economic Development, Trade and Employment, and I'm really looking forward to hearing your thoughts and ideas on how we can continue to work in partnership, creating jobs and prosperity for years to come. Thank you very much.